Good morning, teachers.
Okay, good morning to one and all present here. Earth Day is an annual event and the world's largest environmental movement on April 22 to demonstrate support for environmental protection. It was first held in April 22, 1970, and it would now include a wide range of events coordinated globally by earthday.org, which includes more than 1 billion people and more than 193 countries. A very good morning to one and all present here. My name is Santosh Shaha, and I am a senior assistant professor at Surendra Institute of Engineering and Management, Siliguri. So I would like to welcome Chairman Sir, Director Ma'am, Pro VC Ma'am, Principal Sir, Deputy Registrar Shumantanak Sir, and all HODs of different department, engineering and non-engineering department, my colleagues, guests, and all my dear students in today's event. Now I would like to call Professor Dr. S. Nagarajan for inaugural address.
We'll first inaugurate the session with lighting the lamp, then we'll go on to the session.
Okay. Now I would like to request our Principal Sir, Dr. S. Nagarajan for inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh. Respected Chairman Sir, Director Madam, the Chief Guest of today's function, Dr. Surya Saravanan, Associate Professor, Jerusalem College of Engineering, heads of various department and my dear faculty members and my dearest student participants. Very good morning to one and all present over here. On this International Earth Day, all eyes are on the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now we are facing the second wave, the biggest the test the world has faced since the Second World War. In this situation, we must work together to save lives, ease suffering, and lessen the shattering economic and social consequences. The impact of coronavirus is both immediate and dreadful, but there is no other choice. It's a deep emergency. The planet's unfolding environmental crisis, climate disruption is approaching a point of no return. We must act decisively to protect our planet from both from the coronavirus and the existential threat of climate disruption. The current crisis is an unprecedented wake-up call. We need to turn the recovery into a real opportunity to do things right for the future. I am therefore proposing 6 climate-related actions to shape the recovery and the work ahead. Let me highlight the 6 climate actions, which is really need of the hour to restore our earth. The first action would be, as we spend huge amount of money to recover from the coronavirus, we must deliver new jobs and businesses through a clean and green transition. This is one of the important agenda we must focus on. The second action would be the taxpayers' money is used to rescue businesses. It needs to be tied to achieving green jobs and sustainable growth. If you look at our 2030 agenda, I think most of the countries are focusing on sustainable development growth. I think we will be having separate session on 17 sustainable development goals in order to safeguard our earth from the greenhouse gases. The third action on fiscal firepower must drive a shift from the gray to green economy and make societies and people more resilient. The fourth action, public funds should be used to invest in future, not the past, and flow to sustainable sectors and projects that help the environment and the climate. The fossil fuel subsidies must end. This is immediately we have to take a call, and polluters must start paying for their pollution. The fifth action, the climate risk and opportunity must be incorporated into financial systems as well as all aspects of public policy making and infrastructure. The sixth will be we need to work together as an international community. So these 6 principles constitute an important guide to recovering for the better future. The greenhouse gases, just like another coronavirus. I repeat, greenhouse gases, just like another coronavirus. So do not respect national boundaries. On this Earth Day, please join me in demanding a healthy and resilient future for people and planet alike. With that, I once again thank all the people for giving this wonderful opportunity to speak few things about Earth Day. Thank you, and over to the moderator.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call Dr. Papri Ghosh, HOD CSE, to introduce the chief guest.
University in Hello, I'm audible. Hello.
Now you are audible, ma'am. You can proceed.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Now you are audible, ma'am. You can proceed.
Hello, am I audible now? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. You can proceed. You are
Am I
audible.
audible right now?
Yes.
Ma'am, you can turn off your video.
Hello. Okay. Earlier, she has served Savita Engineering College, B.S. Abdul Rahman University, and Satyabama University as a faculty member and project associate in IIT Madras. She has been recognized as research supervisor of Anna University, and currently she is supervising 5 PhD scholars under her mentorship. She is having specialization on integrated water resource management, remote sensing and GIS for application in water resources, surface water hydrology, fluid mechanics, and the coastal hydraulics. She has awarded as international best researcher in hydrology and water resources engineering by International Journal for Research under Littoral Access in association with World Research Council and United Medical Council at Research Peace Award 2019, held in Trichy on 2019. She has been awarded for Best Doctoral Thesis in Indo Academy Award 2019 by International Association of Research and Development, organization in association with College of Engineering, Kotan, on the second award conference on review, research, and evaluate held at Kesetsart University, Bangkok, Thailand on 2009. She has received Best Paper Award on the paper entitled Hydraulic Analysis of Bhavani River using HECRAS, a case study, in the occasion of Virtual International Conference on Innovative Skills in Civil Engineering in the year of 2020. Furthermore, she has been selected as innovative research and dedicated educationalist by the Society of Innovative Journalists and Scientific Research Professionals on 21. She has published 8 research papers in various national and international journals and conferences, conducted and attended national and international workshops, delivered many case lectures in various organizations. So without wasting any more time, I request to Dr. Priya Saravanan for this session. Thank you. Dr. Surya Saravanan.
Yes, thank you,
Are
ma'am.
you there?
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Naharajan sir, for inviting me for this seminar. And just I'll try to show some insights what I'm having about the particular topic. And thank you, everyone. And first of all, good morning to one and all present here. And as Naharajan sir said, so COVID is a major pandemic situation what we are facing now, and along with that, this greenhouse gases is, I can say that it's another world war we are going to face in because of this climate change or water resources. Because of climate change, 2 hydrologic extremes can take place. One is going to be our drought, and another one is going to be our flood actually. So because of that, everything will get collapsed. If hydrological cycle is getting collapsed, everything will get collapsed, and because of that, we may face lot of problems due to it. So I think I can go to my presentation. I just stop my video and I'm sharing my screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, fine. So the topic given to me is how to restore the earth. So before going into the topic, I just show some of the cartoon imageries, what I've seen in the earth and which has attracted me a lot actually. So we do, people take selfies and we do tweet it in the social media, or we put it in the social media, but see the image that is taken by the earth. So maybe people will notice if I tweet a selfie, so only then if we take actions to restore me, that is the image that is given by the earth. And if you see in the another image, 2 kids are playing there, and one kid is asking, what is that earth day? Is that earth's birthday or something? What does it mean that earth day? So another kid is telling that no, it is the human being. We do celebrate the Earth Day, and we ourselves are polluting the Earth, and we do more damage to the Earth, and also we are celebrating the Earth Day. So this is what the reply given by the kid, and we have a deep notice into it, what we are doing into it. So the first organization of my presentation would be that what is the theme of the Earth Day for this 2021, and what are the natural resources and how far we are going to conserve it, the types of pollution and its prevention, global warming and its effects, And main thing, what I'm going to focus in this presentation will be the carbon footprint. And next is 3R concept. And finally, we'll move on to the green economy. So going into the theme of the Earth today, so restore our Earth, what does it mean? So it means that we have what we are doing it, that is the environmental footprint has to be reduced, and we have done the damage to the maximum from our side. So it has to be fixed first of all. So that is the first thing, that is the main theme of this Earth today. So if you're coming into the natural resources, so what do you mean by this natural resources? So the resources that is acquiring naturally, and it meets the desire of the entire living beings, and these resources are considered to be more valuable. So the main thing is that we do use all these resources not only for our survival but also for our greedy nature. So many of the anthropogenic activities or human activities are done by us, and main thing is that it is not necessary for our survival, but simply to satisfy our needs and simply to meet our greedy nature, we are doing it. So these are the main thing, is that the population exploration, then urbanization, and these have become the major causes for the exploitation of the natural resources. And the five resources, main natural resources, would be the water resources, mineral resources, food resources, land resources, and energy resources. So everyone is known to it, and everyone is knowing about all these resources. So I'm just giving a brief idea of what is what, and then I'll move on to the carbon footprint. So first threat to the water resources will be water privatization. In earlier days, we do not use this bottled waters and all. So we don't see people drinking water in the bottled cans or something. And now we can see that how far the water is getting privatized, and uh, it is blooming up actually. And next one is water pollution. So as such, without following any rules and regulations, we simply pollute the surface water as well as the groundwater to the maximum extent. How far we can doing it out. Even the industries, what they do is, without treatment of water, they just let their effluent into the river as such and polluting it off. And next one is eutrophication. So you can see the image. So the main thing is that in our agricultural lands, we do use fertilizers, and for the even for golf courses, we have for our nature, what we are doing is that we use some pesticides, we use some chemicals, and all those minerals or all those nitrates and phosphates, it will go into the river or lake as a runoff. And what happens is that because of the nutrients that is present in those fertilizers, algal will get blooming up. Algal, something like cyanobacteria or blue green algae, it gets bloomed up, and because of that, the lake itself will become a dead zone. And if the lake becomes a dead zone, what will happen? There will be no survival of living beings in the water resources. As a result, you can see the fishes that can floating as a dead in many of the lakes. The main thing is that it is mainly due to of it eutrophication process. And next thing is biomagnification. Again, if those polluted water is ate by algae, and those algae is again, it is ate by algae eating insects, and finally it is coming to the humans. Then you imagine that all these pollutants, again, we are only consuming. We people pollute and pollute the resources, and again that pollutant will be consumed by us. So this is what is happening, and this is called as biomagnification. And next is oil spill, and major threat will be the global warming. So some of the water conservation techniques can be, we can protect our water from pollution, and we can distribute the water, redistribute the water. Wherever there is a need, we can redistribute off. So as such, our interlinking of rivers concept, something like that. And the rational use of groundwater, and population control. Of course, it is not in our hands, but we can do something. And renovation of traditional water resources, and use of modern irrigation methods, something like we can follow the drip irrigation system rather than flowing the water continuously in it. And proper flood management. So if we control the if we do some identify the flood resource area, and in the flood resource area itself we are recharging something, that is the excess water can be recharged into the ground, and rather than flowing the water as a waste, if we just prioritize the flood resource area, and in that resource area itself we are recharging our groundwater resources, automatically there will not be any flooding in the downstream, that is the effect can be minimized. And apart from that, we are also storing the water for the future, and our groundwater also can also be replenished actually. And reuse of urban waste, and again water conservation by municipal water bodies. And next will be the threat to the mineral resources. We do use minerals for many purposes actually, and we extract and explore the minerals, and lot of mineral extraction is taking place. Some for thermal power plants, we are extracting coals, and some gold mining is there, and many things we do it. So mainly thing is that we do demand for minerals actually, and we are not having any social awareness regarding this conservation of minerals. And once we are using it, we are not we are just simply throw it away. We are not reusing or recycling those minerals. And another thing we should think of will be that alternative renewable substitutes. So what will be an alternative for it? Instead of mining coal or something, we can use our solar energy for our electricity, tidal energy, wind energy. So renewable substitutes, we should think of this renewable substitutes so that we can prevent this mineral, we can conserve this mineral resources. Next one will be the threat to the food resources. As such, I have mentioned earlier, the first threat will be going to be our climate change. So because of climate change, two hydrologic extremes, that is flood is one hydrologic extreme, and drought will be going to be the another hydrologic extreme. Both will be the threat to the human food resources actually, and again impact, we are getting impact out of it. So if too much of water also, we cannot cultivate and we cannot produce food. And the drought is also, if there is excess water also, it will be a problem. If there is no water also, that will be a problem. So this is a main threat to the food resources, that is climate change plays a major role there. And next one will be the aging farmers. So many of the youngsters, they are not willing to do agriculture. So we are going to face a major threat into it. And next is massive bee die-offs. So you might have heard of sparrow dying and bees dying because of usage of mobile phones, and because of that radioactive elements and those things. So bee die-off, why we are going to consider this to be a major threat is something like that. Bees are the one which do pollinating our food actually. So if they die, then automatically the chain will cut off. Then next is genetic engineering, soil erosion, and also of course land development. So majority of the agricultural lands are getting converted into the urban development, and that will also is going to be a threat to the food resources. And main conservation technique is that by providing support to small farmers and environmental friendly farming methods, using some organic farming and all those things, we can preserve it off. And next resources will be the land resources. Again, the threat will be going to be because of overgrazing, not proper inappropriate aggregation, and pollution due to industrial waste, quarrying of stone, sand, and minerals. And how far we can conserve it is that we should do extensive afforestation, and we have to change our agricultural practices, and proper regulation should be there, and land banking also should be there. And final resources will be the energy resources. The main threat will be going to be the greenhouse gas emissions, acid rain, climate change, and depleting supply of our fossil fuels. And energy resources conservation technique is that, as such I mentioned earlier, we have to go for energy saving features. We have to switch off all the appliances when not in use, and we have to go get our energy audit done. And also we have to plant some shady landscaping. So regarding pollution, I think many of us know about this pollution and how to prevent those pollution. So I'm not going much deep into it actually. So because of all the air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and soil pollution, these are the major pollutions. And because of all those pollutions we are generating, it will lead to the global warming. And I'm not going much deep into it. And now I'm focusing on to the global warming, the first causes and effects of this global warming. First thing is that our human activity, because of our human activity, we generate more and more carbon dioxide. And because of that, there will be a change in atmospheric composition. And that will rise to the global temperature. So if the global temperature is rising, what will happen? Automatically, the glaciers will melt. And because of the melting of glaciers, the sea level will get increased. And if the sea level is getting increased, there will be coastal flooding, erosion will take place, and there is a wetland loss. Also, the salt water intrusion will be there. Again, we are the one we are going to consume that water. And this I have discussed earlier, that is a change because of change in climate. We'll have increased drought and increased flood. And again, everything will come under, we are the one, the end user, we are going to get affected in all these aspects. And another interesting thing is about your greenhouse effect. If you have a balanced carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, then that is called as a natural greenhouse effect. And greenhouse effect is very, very essential in order to make our earth to survive. That is, if you want to live in this earth, natural greenhouse effect is very much essential, because it is a natural greenhouse effect which makes the temperature of the earth to be 15 degrees Celsius. So if the temperature is prevailing in that way, then only we can serve in this earth. Otherwise, the earth will go as a frozen one, and it will become like a Mars or something like that, which is not fit to live in. That is a balance. See, carbon dioxide should be there in the atmosphere. Some heat should be there. Then only we can survive in this earth. So that is a natural greenhouse effect. So if we come back to the human activities, what we do is that we are increasing the global temperature by means of excess of carbon dioxide generated by us due to the pollution, due to that mineral resources activities, and many activities what we are doing. So I'll be going into in detail about this carbon dioxide generation in the forthcoming slides. And because of that, we are increasing the global temperature, and that is causing the global warming. So natural greenhouse effect is very much essential for our survival. But what we do is, because of our necessity or because of our greedy nature, whatever we can call it off, we are polluting the earth, and we are doing all the activities, and we are making the carbon dioxide to increase in the atmosphere. And again, now we are speaking about how we can restore the earth. So this is the cycle that goes on actually. So coming to carbon footprint. So this is one main topic which I'm going to focus on: restoration of earth. So what is this carbon footprint actually? So it is a measure of the impact of our activities that we are having on the environment, in particular to the climate change. So how far individual is related to this carbon footprint. So how we are correlating, and how far we are going to calculate this carbon footprint. This is what we are going to see now. So this carbon footprint is relating to the amount of greenhouse gases that is produced in our day-to-day life. We do generate carbon dioxide even by our small activity. So the first thing is that we can define this carbon footprint in, we can classify this as two carbon footprint. One will be the primary carbon footprint. Another will be the secondary carbon footprint. So primary carbon footprint is that it is in our control. So something like that, we do produce the carbon dioxide directly. And second one will be the secondary carbon footprint. So that is out of our control. By the products we are consuming, we are generating carbon dioxide. That is, indirectly we are generating the carbon dioxide gas. So that is going to be the secondary carbon footprint. So I'll give you some examples for both the things. So for example of the primary carbon footprint is some of the home appliances. That is, we plug our switches to charge our mobile phones, and we do switch on it permanently, and we'll forget and we'll go off. Not even we'll unplug it, or we'll switch off the thing. So that kind of thing, we are generating carbon dioxide directly. So that will be the primary carbon footprint. Another thing is that within a 5 minutes walk, we can go to the grocery store and we can get it off. But what we do is we'll take our two-wheeler or we'll take our car to get those essential things or whatever maybe. So in that aspect, we are generating carbon dioxide by our own. So that is called as primary carbon footprint. And secondary carbon footprint is something like we are eating that ready meals, or we are drinking the bottled or filtered water, bottled water, and eating large quantities of red meat, because each and every one, every store will be having their own carbon footprint. So these kind of activities indirectly, if we are generating carbon dioxide, and that is called as the secondary carbon footprint. So one thing is that carbon dioxide is going to be the greenhouse gas which causing global warming. Not only carbon dioxide, we also have other greenhouse gases like methane and ozones. So what we are going to do is that even that methane and ozone will also be converted into the amount of carbon dioxide, and we'll be using it off. And this term we are going to call it as equivalent carbon dioxide amount. And this carbon footprint is going to be the powerful tool to understand the impact of personal behavior on global warming. So from our side, what it can be done to restore the earth. So that is what I'm going to focus here. So for the in simple, I can say that carbon footprint will be the total set of greenhouse gases that is caused by an organization or event or product or person. So our carbon footprint will be the sum of emissions of all of our activities, or emissions of carbon dioxide because of our activities. And generally, this can be calculated for a time period of 1 year. Okay, so when calculating a carbon footprint, we have to consider a lot of factors. So for example, if I am driving to one grocery store, what happens is that I'll be taking my car, I'll be taking my two-wheeler, whatever it is. We are burning certain amount of fuel and fossil fuels, and this will be going to be the primary source for greenhouse gases. That is my primary carbon footprint. And again, if you go to the grocery store or supermarket, they are using the electricity and they are having their own employees, and they are coming to their work by means of two-wheeler or whatever it is. And again, that store will have its own carbon footprint, and that will be the secondary carbon footprint. Apart from that, this store is getting the products from that is getting shipped. The products are getting shipped, and that is also, it will be coming under the carbon footprint. So all the effects, all those things should be taken into consideration to understand the full carbon footprint of a given activity. You can see this picture. So this picture was taken in the year 2016. So in the x-axis, you are having the year, and the y-axis, it is going to be the carbon dioxide emissions. So if you take that starting from the year, it is starting from, I think, from 2000. So 2000 to 2016, you can see the trend in the increase in the carbon dioxide per capita. So if you take India, so 1.8 tons per capita, we are generating a carbon dioxide in 2016. It might have increased now. So China is the largest contributor for this greenhouse gas emission, because they are the persons, they are generating 7.2 tons per capita. And another simple calculation of this carbon footprint is that you are having a fuel, say petrol, gasoline, or diesel, and for single unit, that is 1 liter, the carbon dioxide emitted per unit will be 2.3 kilograms. So if you are using 1 liter of petrol, then the carbon dioxide, what we are going to emit will be 2.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Imagine that I'm going to drive to a nearest place, or a place which is at a distance of 300 kilometers. So my car is consuming 30 liter of petrol for 100 kilometers. Then a drive of 300 kilometers, it will consume some about 90 liters of petrol. Again, if 90 liters of petrol means, so 207 kilogram of carbon dioxide we are generating for our own purpose, and that will be added to our personal carbon footprint. So this is how we have to calculate our carbon footprint. And another thing is that if we can add 1 kg of carbon dioxide to our personal carbon footprint if you are doing the certain activities. That is even for a very small distance. If you are using a car, And if you are producing 5 plastic bags, that is 5 plastic bags we are dumping in, then we are responsible for the generation of 1 kg of carbon dioxide. And if we drink bottled water and if we are disposing of 2 plastic bottles, and again we are generating 1 kg of carbon dioxide. So this is how we have to calculate our carbon footprint, and each and every activity what we are doing is that either it will come under primary carbon footprint or it will come under secondary carbon footprint. So the thing is that we are generating the carbon dioxide, and if we throw 5 plastic bags, and we can add that 1 kg of carbon dioxide is generated by yours from our side actually. And if you are throwing 2 plastic bottles, again we are generating 1 kg of carbon dioxide. And this is how slowly you imagine that 130 crores of people, and each and every one are throwing plastic bags and plastic bottles into the air. And imagine how many kilogram of carbon dioxide is generated because of only these two activities. This is how we are generating more and more carbon dioxide. If more and more carbon dioxide is generated, again the greenhouse gases emission is more, again it will have an impact on climate change. And it is a major issue actually. So what can be done to reduce our carbon footprint from our side? One thing is that carpooling at least once a week. So this is just a trial, we can try it out actually. At least once a week we can go for a carpooling. So if a maximum of 5 seats is there, let us occupy the 5 seats and we can drive off, not a single person to drive a car and go off. And at least in don't throw off the don't, you know, do not use the disposable cups. Instead use the reusable cups. And whenever people is not there, switch off the lights in the empty room. And do not take the ready-made lunch, pack your lunch and use reusable vessels or something. And unplug your computer every night at least for a month. So what we are doing is that we just switch off and we are going it off. Instead just unplug it, actually unplug the wire. That from that we can save the generation of carbon dioxide can be reduced to some extent. So if all the people are doing, automatically there will be a major reduction. So we may think that what will happen if myself alone is unplugging the computer. It is not the case. If everyone is doing, it can create a major impact actually. And we can reduce the bottled water consumption, and use the recyclable products whenever it is possible. And another thing is that you can skip a trip and you can go for a shop online. I think because of this COVID situation, our earth has restored to some extent, not totally, to very small extent, because we are not going outside, we are shopping online and many things are taking place. In that case, some positive aspect can has I can tell of that. And another important concept to reduce our carbon footprint is this 3R principle, that is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So this is called as 3R concept, and we can use this concept to reduce our carbon footprint. So the best way to manage for our reduction is that not to produce it anymore. So for instead of buying a single product for each and every one, what I'll do is morning I'll go and buy a milk. Then at 10 o'clock, I'll go and buy some dals or something and coming back. And again, 3 o'clock, I'll go and buy wheat packets. So don't do such activity. Buy for a month. So buy it for a bulk product, and avoid over packaged foods also. Avoid disposable goods. And if whenever we are taking the printout, try to don't take one side copies, use both side copies, and use electronic mails or something, so that avoid the usage of paper. And the next one is reuse of products. So reuse of products is that save paper and plastic bags. Instead, I can say that try to avoid the usage of plastic bags and try to use the cloth bags. And if any appliances is broken, what we do is that we are using one mobile. If one latest mobile is coming off, we throw this mobile as a waste, and again we buy a new product. So again, this will go as a landfill, and it is destroying actually. Rather, you can repair your broken appliances or furniture and toys. Do not throw it as a waste. Try to reuse how much it is possible, just reuse it up. Even if you have a old cloths, you can use it as a curtains or whatever it is, something like that. try to reuse as much as possible and then finally discard it off. And the last one is recycling. So we can do our recycling at home and work. So try to buy products from recycled material. So if you buy some any products, you will have that symbol in the bottle. You can see that from 1 to 7, it will be ranked actually. So you can see that symbol. We can, or else you can ask your store managers and you can see it off and that buy made up of recycled material or the item that can be recycled very easily. And just consider purchasing the recycled materials. Don't think it is an older one or whatever it is. So just consider purchasing this recycled materials and use recycled paper for our letterheads or newsletters or something. So next will be the previous thing and all. What are the things that can be done from our side? So next is that from our government side or from the others, how can we can do it off? So that term we call it as green economy. This green economy will lead to the sustainable development of our nation. So you might have heard there are 7 different colors of economy, stating that orange economy, green economy, black economy, white economy, brown economy, so purple economy. I hope you might have heard of all those economies. And especially this green economy is for the sustainable development. So that will result in reducing the environmental risk and ecological scarcities without degrading the environment. And the main thing is that this focuses on reduction of carbon emissions and pollutions, and it will enhance the energy and resources and efficiency, and it will prevent the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem. Main thing is that it can be achieved by means of public expenditure, targeted public expenditure, policy reforms, and regulation changes. So there should be an interaction between the environment and economy. Only then we can go for a sustainable development. That is the thing. So why we should go for a green economy? The main thing is that this is an economic vehicle to sustainable development, and we are in need of a new economic paradigm and extraction of resources. So we do extract most of the resources, and automatically it will affect in the global economic growth. So we have to plan our infrastructure in such a way that it should go for a sustainable resource use approach. So only for thing we should think of the green economy. So Carl Buchat, he defines the green economy based on 6 main sectors. So one is renewable energy, green buildings, sustainable transport, water, waste, and land management. So if we focus on these 6 aspects, that is either government or at the government level, or whenever we are taking some projects, whoever is taking the projects, if we are focusing on these 6 main sectors, then automatically we can bloom our green economy can bloom up. So if green economy is there, automatically our earth can be restored. So that is the concept behind it. So renewable energy is that we can use solar energy, hydro energy, wind energy, geothermal, tidal, or biomass. So which is we can use we can use these kind of energies for our electricity generation, or wherever it is necessary, we can use this. And next one is a sustainable transport. So what does it mean? Actually, because of our transport systems, we are accounting for about 20 to 25% of world's energy consumption. So world's energy consumption is mainly because of this transport. That is, it takes approximately of 20 to 25%. And because of the transport only, more and more carbon dioxide is emitted. So if you go for a sustainable transport, then automatically this effect can be reduced. So some of the examples will be that go for a walk. That is walking, cycling, transit, carpooling, car sharing, or usage of green vehicles. So we have to balance both our current as well as the future needs. So if you think of walking, it is good for us as well as for the environment. So dual is possible. Even cycling is like that only. So main thing is that we have to we should create low impact on the environment because of our activity. And next is land management. So if you go for the land management, we have discussed already previously. So zero deforestation, that is maximum number of, afforestation should be there, and there should be zero deforestation. And we should focus on integrated water management. not on simply water management, that is integrated water management should be there, and reduction of waste, better livestock management, better cropland management, and agroforestry should be there, and proper urban planning should be there. So if these all the things is taking place, then automatically we'll move towards climate mitigation, adaptation, and biodiversity conservation. So that is thing. And next one is about the green building. So green building is the one that which uses less water, it optimizes energy efficiency, and it conserves our natural resources, and it generates less waste, and it provides healthier space for occupants. So even now, if we have a building that can be modified as a green building, I can show you one example that. So imagine that this is going to be the existing building. So how far we can remodify it, something like that. We can use a rainwater harvesting system for the on the roof, and just collect the water and use it to flush the toilets and use it off. And another thing is that you can use solar panels for to as well as to generate the electricity, or for heating of our instead of using geysers or heaters, we can use the solar panels. And next one is we can use wind turbines, and another is non-toxic paints can be used. So toxic paints is the one which generate more volatile organic compounds. Actually, VOC will be more in that many of the paints. So we should think of considering non-toxic paints, or low volatile organic substances, so that pollutants can be reduced. And next is that we can use CFL bulbs. So this CFL bulbs, it will use 20% less energy than incandescent bulbs. And another thing is that we can use dual flush toilets, so that we can control our water outlet options. And the water which is coming from gray, that is the gray water which is coming out from our bath sinks and kitchens, that can be used to flush our toilets. And energy efficient appliances should be used in order to reduce our power use. And we can use our motion detectors also. So if person is not there, automatically the lights or fan should be switched off. So that motion detector also we can fix it off. And a rain garden also, you can fix a rain garden, rooftop garden. So that will have a reduction in stormwater runoff. And another one thing is that using, that is source segregation, that is waste management should be done at source segregation itself. And most of the food scraps and biodegradable material, so that will be a vermicomposting can be done. And wherever we are growing plants, we can use that off. So something like that we can do for an existing building, and we can renovate our building into a green building. Actually, the green building cost will be, building a green building, it will cost a little bit than building a normal building. But in returns, within after 2 years, we can have that power and water savings after 2 years. So your returns will be got after 2 years, not immediate result you will be getting. That is your return for investment, you will not get it immediately, but certain after 2 to 3 years you will have that have your returns actually. So we have to think of building a green building rather than building a normal building. So another concept for this conceptual drawing for this green building, that we have to improve the insulation, and automated ventilation control should be there. And that is motion detection, keeping the motion detection sensors. And something we have to do rainwater utilization system. So if we do, and we can convert our building into a green building, and thereby we can preserve our natural resources actually. And next one is the water management. So it is the activity of planning, developing, and distributing and managing the optimum use of water resources. So we have to consider everything, not only that when we are going for any of the project, we should think from the upstream. That is, we should think of a watershed management. Somehow we are planning for a flood control measures, or whatever flood control measures is planned. What we think is that we think from the administrative boundary. Say this is my city limit, or this is my village limit, and we'll be thinking in that perspective, rather than think in a watershed perspective. So whenever a water resources, where dam is constructed, or a check dam is going to be constructed, or sharing of resources between two states or two districts, or two districts or two villages. So think in a broader perspective, in a watershed management perspective, and that way we can, starting from the planning stage, we should start it off and we should think of the optimum use of water resources. And the final one will be the waste management. So whatever the waste that is generated, first itself segregate at the as the source, at source itself just segregate it. That is food waste and all in one dustbin, and another waste is in another dustbin, medical waste is in another dustbin, so harmful waste in another dustbin. So we have to segregate at the source itself, just collect it and then transport it, and from there we'll have this recyclable and non-recyclable um, wastes. And from the recyclable waste we can generate a fuel, that is refuse derived fuel, that is RDF, can be generated from our municipal waste and industry waste, and it can be used for the vehicles, and we can run using that vehicle. So this should be done for the waste management. So the main means to achieve the green economy is that, so proper sound regulatory framework should be there. So we have to prioritize our green investment, and we have to go green wherever it is, try to go green. And as sir mentioned earlier, we have to target on sustainable development goals. We are earlier it was millennium development goals, which was developed on 2000, and they gave a target year to be 2015. But unfortunately majority of the goals has not been reached properly. So again they have developed sustainable development goals, and they have fixed the target on 2030. Many countries are members of this actually. And local authorities should be engaged in all the activities, and main thing is that cooperation of the public and the awareness of the public, and intergovernmental cooperation also should be there. So if these things occur, then we can achieve our green economy. So finally I just want to conclude that in order to save or restore our earth, so we have to reduce our carbon footprint. That is a major thing we should take from our side. So from the government side it is different. So first we have to start from our side. So from our side we have to reduce the carbon footprint as much as possible. So we have to reduce our car usage or two-wheeler usage. So use our water saving appliances. We have to follow the 3R concept, that is reduce, reuse, and recycle. And whenever we are not there, switch off the lights and fans, and particularly not only switching it off, just unplug our wires whenever it is not in use. Buy locally grown food, and do not use any pesticides actually. So that will lead to the eutrophication process. So we should think of the renewable energy of using wind or direct solar, and we should use it up. So this is the thing. So every year earth is telling to us, I'm keep losing on a little top, kindly consider me and restore me. So this is the earth that is earth is giving a message to us. And we have to save the earth by saving our trees, by saving water, by saving energy, and we should stop our pollution. Thank you. Any queries?
Excellent presentation. You have covered almost all the areas.
Thank you, sir.
Right from green energy to waste management. You have covered, you have touched upon all the points.
Thank you, sir. So any queries or anything to be answered? You are open now.
Students, if you have any queries, you can post your queries in the chat box. So meanwhile, we can invite the student participants to present their topic. Santosh, you can proceed. You can call upon the students one by one. Ma'am, if you want to leave, you can stay back for another half an hour.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you.
It was a very informative speech by the ma'am.
Hello.
Santosh, you are not audible. Maybe students one by one, as per the schedule, you can switch on your audios. I will start from mechanical department.
Good morning, sir. I'm audible.
Yes, yes, Negal, you can proceed.
Okay, sir. A very good morning, my dear Dadaji, Chairman, sir, OPC ma'am.
Negal, your voice is breaking. Maybe you can switch off your video and speak.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir. A very good morning, my dear Dadaji, Chairman, sir, OPC ma'am, Director ma'am, my dear teachers, my dear seniors, my dear friends. The topic for my today's speech is overcoming climate change with technological advancements. So, one of the great inventors of the 18th century, Nikola Tesla, once said that science is not just about business or money, but rather science should be regarded as a tool with which we can provide service to all of mankind. This is a quote that is applicable today as well, where science and technology is a weapon bestowed upon us in our battle against our greatest enemies, our greatest problems. And as of today, climate change is by far the greatest challenge to all of human civilization. It is a blemish to our pursuit of a balanced world. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the global temperature has risen up by about 1 degree Celsius, and it is projected to rise by about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. So in order to solve the problem of climate change, first we have to identify the causes of climate change. One of the main causes of climate change is due to the emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere through our daily activities. So in brief, today's technologies are to be designed in such a way that it can replace other fossil fuel burning activities, and which may eventually reduce the emission of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So here are the top 5 technologies which can help us in our battle against climate change. So firstly, we have solar panels and wind turbines. Of course, they're very well known. They turn sunlight and wind into electricity without releasing greenhouse gases. These technologies have scaled up and converted energy more efficiently. Therefore, their price has come down and become more cheaper as compared to fossil fuels. This diversifies the energy supply, which reduces our dependence on imported fuels. They also have a potential of creating economic development and jobs in manufacturing, installation, etc. Wind power could be up to 20 to 25% of the world electricity demand. This could also correspond to about 2,000 terawatt hour, or about 15% of the present world consumption of electricity. So therefore, in today's world, where fossil fuels are becoming more scarce and harmful for our environment, and if nuclear energy is not desired, wind energy and solar power would generate a great share of world's electricity power needs. The second technology is about batteries for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are a form of technology which can revolutionize our transport industry, especially owing to the fact that they run without releasing greenhouse gases. About 28.2% of the total greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere is accounted due to vehicular emission. So it is very important for us to curb those emissions. But eventually, generating electricity is one thing, and storing and distributing it is another. Therefore, in this case, lithium-ion batteries plays a very important role, where they are lighter and smaller as compared to the earlier batteries. They can also be charged faster and more often. As their weight and price continue to fall, they are playing an increasingly vital role in decarbonizing the transport sector by making electric vehicles more cheaper. The global electric vehicle fleet has grown rapidly, passing about 5 million cars in 2018, data from International Energy Agency. And the third technology is hydrogen and fuel cells. It is a way of storing energy by using electrolyzers to extract hydrogen from water. Like this is a process in which it's a way of storing energy in different forms where engineers run electric current through water and then collect the hydrogen molecules that break up. Then this hydrogen can be burned for heat or can be stored in fuel cells or can be turned into chemicals such as methane for processes that require fossil fuels. This hydrogen can also help decarbonize a very highly polluting sector that has mostly been overlooked, that is the heavy industry. The high heat needed to process the industrial materials is responsible for about 10% of the total greenhouse gas emission, according to a report by Global Energy Policy. And on the other hand, fuel cell is an electrochemical device that converts chemical energy of fuel into electrical energy without combustion. It can be used in domestic applications, in industries, and in transport. The next technology is carbon capture and storage. It is a technique in which carbon from the atmosphere is captured and stored in a place where it is inaccessible to the outer Earth's atmosphere. For example, like plants and trees are a good example of carbon capture, where they extract CO2 from the atmosphere and then they release oxygen in return to the process of photosynthesis. But they are not a secure way of storing carbon because they can be like felled for firewood or they can be burned during forest fires, thus releasing the carbon back into the atmosphere. So therefore, some companies are experimenting with technology which can capture CO2 from the power plants and then storing them deep underground, which will make them inaccessible to the outer environment. Thus, by doing this, by doing this in biomass plants, power can be like produced, and in the same time, the amount of CO2 can also be reduced in the atmosphere. And the fifth technology is, of course, satellite space, where MethaneSat, or satellite mission, which is due to launch in 2021, it is solely designed to continuously map and measure the methane emissions with exact precision, like almost anywhere on Earth. It will help countries, companies, and citizens to spot problems in identifying reduction opportunities and measure progress over time. So these were the 5 technologies that I wanted to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Negal. And next, we'll call upon Zeenath Negal from Mechanical.
Before I start, I want to make clear, am I audible, sir?
Yes, Zeenath, yes.
There are many things we can do to change the ecosystem of our planet Earth. Become a climate activist, help the animals, or plant trees. Sometimes changing the world can be as simple as putting trash right into the dustbin. The most important thing is planting the right impression, because a small idea today can be a huge world changing revolution tomorrow. A very good morning to everyone present out here. It's always good to see such young men and women raise their voices with the right cause. It's always exhilarating to meet people with similar goals and discuss how we, gentlemen and ladies of the technological mindset, can use science to protect and rejuvenate the earth and the ecosystem that our predecessors have spent centuries on destroying. We live in times when the need to protect and revive the environment is on the rise. It's no hidden truth that the earth is dying and it needs a break from the constant exploitation of its resources by mankind. It need not be pointed out that we humans are gradually digging our own graves. With a steep rise in population and increasing demand of basic necessities like food, water, air, we are going to deprive the future generation of these resources. And when I say future generations, I mean my future, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when I'll be in my late 20s and my early 30s, I won't be able to recall what natural air feels like or what natural water tastes like, because we will be breathing out of gas masks and eating synthesized product, because naturally availability will be so scarce. So we realize this. However, the general population does absolutely little to nothing to solve the problem of the increasing burden on the Earth's resources. And when we talk about general population, I'm saying about people who are educated people who roam around in expensive cars. We see these people throwing trash out of their windows. Here, education is not the problem. Here, awareness is what the factor that's missing. The Earth's dying along with its natural components, yet we continue to drain the natural resources wealth as the biodiversity chokes on our regards. Tackling one problem at a time, one of the largest environmental crises we humans face today is our incapability in waste management. We humans are generating too much trash and cannot deal with it in a sustainable way. Waste that is not biodegradable are filling our lands and oceans, choking our marine life, which are most important component of our ecosystem. Let's take plastic for example. According to a recent study, out of 6.3 billion metric tons, I will repeat that number, 6.3 billion metric tons of plastic, and only 9% of that has been recycled. We are steadily turning our Earth into a giant trash can. Ocean trash is the greatest living example of management failure there is. The numbers staggering. There are 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic debris in the ocean, out of which 269,000 float on the surface, whereas some 4 billion tons of litter in the deep sea. As the methods to measure ocean trash develops, stacking numbers surface. The methods to remove the said trash remains elementary. And while the technology steadily develops, we need some out-of-the-box technology to remove and dispose of the millions of debris that litter the ocean surface and the bed. A small floating item can be heard quietly whirring in the dock of Montego Bay of Kotor, helping us solve one of the biggest environmental problems, the sea bin. What a simple name for a technology that is doing wonders in saving an ecosystem that's dying. It's basically a bucket with a sleeve that goes up and down. Water is sucked in from the surface and passes through the bucket, and it pushes it out into the ocean, leaving the debris and plastic in the bin itself. It's simple technology, and yet so efficient in doing the damage undone. Engineering technologies are all over the world, are coming up with ingenious ideas that have potential to change the world. We, the young engineers, are not here only to learn, but bring onto the world our ideas and inspiration to restore the planet Earth to its natural primordial state, and come up with sustainable technologies that grow with Mother Earth rather than step down on her or burden her shoulders. Of course, we don't need to invent a complicated technology like an AI drone scanning the ocean bed for trash or biodegradable plastic. Remember, folks, it could be as simple as putting your trash into the dustbin. Thank you and have a great Earth Day.
Thank you, Jeenath, for your energetic presentation. Next, I call upon Manisha Ragman from ECE department.
Hello everyone. Before I want to confront my current situation that I box and not in a position to video camera. As well, I'd like to ask for permission from Twitter and if you could allow me in this way to present my presentation. Hello.
Manisha, your voice is not audible. It is breaking. You can check your internet connection. Meantime, I will call other speakers. Shivangi Diwan from Civil Engineering.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sama-
Yeah, perfect. You can proceed.
Okay, so good afternoon, our honorable chief guest, respected principal sir, respected teachers, and my dear friends. I am Shivangi Dewan from Civil Engineering Department, and my topic for today is how to save our planet Earth. Firstly, I would like to say that I'm really honored to be here because today it is Earth Day, which is the world's largest environmental campaign celebrated all over the world, where millions around the globe give a voice to environmental issues and remind us that we must do our part beyond our own backyards. Earth Day challenges us to take our job seriously as caretakers of our own natural environment. It inspires us to think of more than just our sustenance, but to act on behalf of this planet we share and all its inhabitants. Earth Day is being celebrated annually since 1970, but over the last 50 years, nature's capacity to support us has plummeted. Air and water quality are reducing and soils are depleting. And since the 1970s, Earth's population has doubled and consumption has increased by 45% per capita. Before 500 AD, man had a good relationship with Earth. But since humans developed cities and industries, the modern lifestyle has changed. Man has been using and misusing natural resources up to the limit. Now we are tearing up remote corners of the planet looking for crude oil and coal, and our forests and wild animals are disappearing. Our environment is totally polluted. We drink polluted water, inhale air full of dust, and eat food with traces of pesticides and other toxic chemicals. Hence, we are suffering from diseases. As a result of human activities, the ozone layer has a hole, the sea is rising, and the ice caps of Antarctica and Greenland are melting. Now, global warming is warning us that climate change is not a hoax. Let's say the world is increasingly managed in a way that maximizes the flow of material from nature to meet rising human demands for resources like food, energy, timber, etc. As a result, humans have directly altered at least 70% of Earth's land for their own needs, which necessitates deforestation, degradation of land, loss of biodiversity, and pollution, which have the biggest impact on land and freshwater ecosystems. Nature benefits humans in a non-material ways. We learn from it and we are inspired by it. It gives us physical and psychological experiences and supports our identity and sense of place. But its capacity to provide these services has been diminished over the past many years. And this loss of ecosystem is directly and indirectly caused by us. Indirectly in the sense which includes demographic, economic, political, and constitutional arrangements underpinned by social values. Sadly, there is no part of the earth left that has not been affected by our own actions. So if we want to protect human race and other life forms, we must protect our Mother Earth. First, life is only possible when we will safeguard Earth from degradation, and protecting our planet starts with us. And if we do not take strict action now, we will lose the chance of seeing our future generation flourish forever. Everyone must come together for the same cause, as we are inhabitants of this planet firstly and then anything else. As all human activities are impacting the lives of other organisms, humans only need to take steps to protect the earth and its resources. A little effort will go a long way on everyone's end. Each action will make a difference. For instance, if one man decides to stop drinking bottled water, thousands of plastic can be saved from consuming. Furthermore, we must not forget the little everyday things we can do to be more sustainable. We can start by taking up public transportation, and we can look for transportation alternatives such as cycling, which is way more healthier and affordable. We can start by planting more trees to make up for the deforestation that is happening these days at a rapid rate. When we plant trees, ecological balance can be restored and we can improve the quality of life. Similarly, we must stop wasting water. Especially when done on individual levels, this will create a huge impact on conserving water. We must not pollute our water bodies by dumping waste in it. It is essential to save water, most importantly, as it is running out rapidly. We must not dump the garbage anywhere, or instead, we may compost them. Households usually throw away 474 pounds of food per year. By composting, the amount of food that is wasted is reduced, and that compost can even be reused as manure in your own garden. We must stop consuming things we don't need. In general, we can look for opportunities to reduce, recycle, and reuse in everything we do, such as we must start buying local products as it reduces the amount of environmental pollutants we are exposed to, since products won't need to travel as far. This also helps to preserve farmland by using locally grown products. And recycle is also a very effective way to reduce landfill waste, which does not only applies to plastic, paper, or glass, but appliances and electronic devices also contain plastic, metal, and other non-biodegradable materials. It's therefore very important to recycle them once they are no longer of use, so their impact on the environment is minimal. We must avoid use of plastic bags and plastic products and switch to LEDs, live energy wise, and make our home more energy efficient. Volunteering for cleanups and educating others about the importance of our natural resources is also very important. So ultimately, switching to clean energy is an important step which would allow other changes to happen more easily. But in order to achieve this fully, the world needs to reevaluate the current political structures and societal norms, which tend not to value nature. Clean waters will never flow from dirty politics. When the polluters are allowed to own so many of our public officials, environmental policies will never be made in public interest. So, most importantly, the only way is by improving our existing environmental policies and regulation, as well as removing and reforming harmful policies. In short, the government and individuals must come together to save our earth. Earth Day may be one day out of the year, but we must walk the talk professionally and personally and treat every day like it's Earth Day. Because it's up to us to ensure a sustainable, resilient, and prosperous future. If all this collective effort starts happening, we can surely save our planet Earth and make it brighter and healthier. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivangi. Manisha, are you there? Manisha of EC department, are you there? Okay, we'll call upon Nega Rani from CSC.
Hello, sir, am I audible?
Yeah, yes, please.
A very good afternoon to each and everyone present. I'm Neha Rani and I'm currently in 4th semester CSC department. Due to load shedding and poor network connection, I'm extremely sorry to say that I won't be able to switch on my video. Today, 22nd April, is celebrated as Earth Day globally to acknowledge the climate crisis, which is at an alarming state and needs immediate attention. Climate change is an important, current, and ongoing issue. This is especially true in the Arctic region. If you are unaware of what climate change is, it is a global or regional change in weather patterns that lasts for a long period of time. Climate change is greatly caused by the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide, which is produced by the use of fossil fuels such as exhaust from cars and trucks, burning trash, and factory emissions. These are also contributing to global warming, which is a gradual increase in the overall temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. Some effects of global warming in the Arctic are rising temperatures in the Earth and water surrounding the Arctic. Another is the loss of sea ice and melting of ice sheets, which is caused by the increased temperature. This also greatly impacts the Arctic plants and animals. They are rapidly dying, decreasing in numbers, possibly leading to their extinction. The melting ice sheets are destroying the wildlife population and increasing the sea levels. Humans play a huge role in climate change and global warming on Earth. Human activities are the leading cause of climate change in the Arctic. Humans using fossil fuels is one of the biggest cause. I request to please switch off your audio. Yeah, thank you. Humans using fossil fuels is one of the biggest cause of climate change. Fossil fuel combustion releases harmful chemicals into the atmosphere, negatively affecting it, leading to the problems in the atmosphere such as the hole in the ozone layer. Pollution is also a huge factor of climate change. Air pollutants affect the amount of sunlight coming into the atmosphere. Some pollutants warm the earth while the others cool it down. The most common pollutants are methane, black carbon, ground level ozone, and sulfate aerosols. Deforestation is another huge leading cause due to climate change. By reversing the effects of carbon sequestration and releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Deforestation is responsible for about 18% of global greenhouse gas emission from human activities, even more than that from transportation. Building houses and other structures affect the environment because it produces a ton of waste and harmful chemicals which pollutes the air and water. Climate change is a direct threat to a child's ability to survive, grow, and thrive. As extreme weather events such as cyclones and heat waves increase in frequency and ferocity, they threaten children's lives and destroy infrastructure critical to their well being. Floods compromise and water and sanitation facilities, leading to diseases such as cholera, to which children are particularly vulnerable. Children are the least responsible for climate change, yet they'll bear the greatest burden of its impact. Droughts and changing global rainfall patterns are leading to crop failures and rising food prices, which for the poor mean food insecurity and nutritional deprivation that can have lifelong impacts. These also have the potential to destroy livelihoods, drive migration and conflict, and cripple opportunities for children and young people. The drivers of air pollution are the same as those of climate change. Approximately 2 billion children live in areas where air pollution level exceeds standards set by WHO, causing them to breathe toxic air and putting their health and brain development at risk. Every year, over 500,000 of children under the age of 5 die from air pollution related causes. Even more will suffer lasting damage to their developing brains and lungs. Pneumonia remains the leading infectious cause of death among children under 5, killing approximately 2,400 children a day. Child deaths caused by pneumonia are strongly linked to undernutrition, lack of safe water and sanitation, indoor air pollution, and inadequate access to health care, all challenges that are exacerbated by climate change. This is the first time a global generation of children will grow up in a world made far more dangerous and uncertain as a result of changing climate and degraded environment. For children who are already disadvantaged, the strikes are even higher. Poorer families have a harder time coping with shocks. The most vulnerable are already losing their homes, health, and education. And as climate change makes crises more common, it becomes harder to recover from them. Already today, some 785 million people lack access to basic water services, and by 2040, almost 600 million children are projected to live in areas where the demand for water will exceed the amount available. The evidence of the impact of climate change and air pollution on children is firm and growing, but time is running out fast. So, what can we do? There are solutions to this problem as long as we particularly use and perform them. We can save gas and reduce its emission into the air by walking and biking more. We could also use electric cars instead of using vehicles that emit gas and other chemicals into the air. Planting more trees and plants can help because they take in carbon dioxide, removing it from the air and replacing it with oxygen, which is healthy for our atmosphere. We should plant as many and more trees as we are cutting down, because we are cutting down a ton of trees without replacing them, and we need trees. They are essential for life and the air on earth. Without trees, we wouldn't have oxygen and our atmosphere wouldn't be the same. We can eat more locally grown food that will reduce gas emission from transporting food to us from out of town. Using less heat and air conditioning can also help. Just lowering at your house temperature 2 degrees in the winter and keeping it 2 degrees higher in the summer can make a pretty big difference. Saving electricity by turning off lights, computers, TVs, and other electrical devices when you're not using them can also help. Also, if you use less hot water by lowering the temperature on your hot water tank, using low flow shower heads, washing clothes with cold water, and using the energy saving mode on dishwashers can also be very helpful. We could also use the reduce, reuse, and recycle model. There are some technological advancements that could also be helpful for coping up with the climate change in the Arctic. One that could really help is building giant walls around glaciers that can prevent warm ocean water from eroding the glacier edges. By doing this, we can block the flow of warm water, shielding the glacier from warm water and reducing the melting rate significantly. Another technological advancement that we could greatly use is creating cooling tunnels in the ice by drilling holes in the glaciers, creating tunnels in the bedrock and pouring cold brine into them, which would freeze some of the water underneath the glacier and slow the moving ice and give the glacier more time to solidify once the brine starts flowing through the glaciers. Implementing new and improved navigation and communication satellites because the current ones are inaccurate and unreliable at higher heights can also help. Most importantly, we can educate others and raise awareness about this problem by testing and training oil companies to clean up possible oil spills, donating time and money, posting about it on social media, putting it on the news, writing new articles or blogs about it, signing petition and using and attending different programs and training courses related to it. It is possible to solve this issue, but the majority of us humans have to be willing to work together and perform different actions to help stop climate change. There are many different careers and people that can help to stop and limit climate change, like environmental engineers, environmental scientists, and public relations specialists. But each one of us can contribute and help reduce environmental pollution and thus climate change, in which the most necessary and important action is to educate people around us and making them aware of the situation. So, on this Earth Day, let us all promise to protect everything we love. Think about a cleaner environment, a happier family, a better future. Think about how we can build it as we still have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Negarani. Before moving on to the vote of thanks, I request all the participants to switch on your video so that we can capture virtual group photo. And one more announcement regarding attendance link. By mistake, I have posted wrong attendance link in the chat box. Recently, I have posted the correct attendance link for today's webinar. I request all of you to submit your attendance using the Ignore the previous link. I have posted the new attendance link in the chat box. All are requested to submit your attendance. Yeah, thank you. Tapan sir, you can propose vote of thanks.
Sir, thank you, sir. It is our immense pleasure to host all the participants to this international webinar on how to restore the earth on a virtual mode. On behalf of the SIM family, I express my sincere thanks to all the participants for joining this session. I express my heartfelt thanks to the chief guest and keynote speaker of this webinar, Dr. S. Surya, Associate Professor of Jerusalem College of Engineering, Chennai, to have with us today on virtual mode, in spite of our busy schedule. We are very much thankful to Professor Dr. S. Nagarajan, Principal SIM, and convener of this webinar for his continuous support, mentorship, and valuable advices, which have greatly helped towards organizing this webinar in this pandemic situation. I sincerely thanks to all faculties and students for their valuable suggestions and active participation with untiring zeal. I sincerely acknowledge the unwavering support received from all the HODs, faculty, and staff members of our institution. Lastly, I express my sincere gratitude to respected Mr. Sharad Agarwal, Chairman SIM, Provisy Ma'am, and Mrs. Signa Agarwal, Director SIM, for their wholehearted support to organize this webinar. Once again, thanks to everybody. Stay safe.